Today I would like to address a topic that I think is very important, especially if you are still finding yourself in a toxic relationship. I would like to talk about the early red flags that you might be experiencing physical abuse later down the road in your relationship. I personally experienced some of the red flags that I'm going to talk about, and the sooner you recognize them, the better you have a chance of leaving that toxic relationship. First of all, I think once again we can commonly agree that most of us were dealing with a covert type of narcissist. Because if we had seen the abuse right from the get-go, I think we would not have gotten involved with a narcissist to begin with. And even in the beginning, the narcissist was already showing us what he was actually capable of doing to us. But why didn't we recognize that? Because quite often they did it under the guise of, oh, I'm just kidding, I'm just joking, or they did something very, very playful, like grabbing you from behind and holding you really, really tight. That was already a potential red flag of them becoming physically violent later down the road. Because what they do when they do this playful grabbing is they hold you so really, really tight, often from behind, that in the beginning they might even joke about it. And you smile and you think, that's kind of funny, but they won't be losing their grip. It takes quite a while until they let go again. And in the meantime, you notice it takes a little bit too long. You start struggling. You want to break free, but you can't. You notice in that moment how strong they actually are. So for a narcissist, it's a display of their strength. It can be very intimidating. Like I said in the beginning, you may not even notice it so much. But if it happens time and time again over time, you notice how this grip is actually tightening on you. Another thing they might do might be blocking your way. When you try to get out of a room, they might be standing in the door and everything becomes like sort of a playful struggle in the beginning. But the playfulness often subsides over time. A narcissist may also push you. You might take a nice walk in the park and suddenly he pushes you out of nowhere and you think, what was that for? Again, they will do it in a allegedly playful manner. But let me tell you, even if it's all fun and games, at least for them, when somebody pushes you and you stumble, you can hurt yourself. This almost happened to me. I remember we were walking in the park on a path and when I was in the middle of a slope, he gave me a push and he was laughing. Again, I was on a downhill slope when he pushed me. I had to take a few steps so fast forward so that I could catch my own fall. I could have severely injured myself. Another thing narcissists tend to do is to put their hands around your neck. Again, in the beginning, very playfully. If you ask me, in that kind of moment, I think that a narcissist is actually just taking measurements. They want to see if their hands are big enough to choke you. I've experienced it myself. In the beginning, I wasn't thinking much of it, but in hindsight, I can tell you, I think that is exactly what happened. Another red flag is when they have a tendency to snap. And somebody who has a tendency to snap has a great potential of becoming physically violent over time. Because when somebody snaps, they are running out of control. In the beginning, when they snap, they might be verbally abusive. They might call you names. They may also, another thing that they may do is to throw things. Worst case scenario, they will throw things at you. Maybe, I don't know, one day I remember that he threw a cell phone at me because I caught something on his phone. He walked outside, he deleted the pictures very quickly, came back inside and threw his cell phone at me. That already constituted physical abuse, by the way. Somebody throwing an object at you, that, my dear, is physical abuse. And that should not be tolerated. But I'm talking about the early red flags of physical abuse. A narcissist may be throwing objects through the room, not specifically targeting you, but the anger behind it is targeted at you. You have to understand that. It might be banging doors, breaking dishes, and most of the time all of this happens really, really fast without a moment's notice. And by the way, there is a huge misconception when it comes to domestic violence or even narcissistic abuse, which also includes domestic violence, of course. And the misconception is that quite often people say, I wasn't abused because my partner didn't hit me. But there's so much more than just physical violence. And usually this is how narcissistic abuse starts. It starts with manipulation, gaslighting, psychological abuse, emotional abuse, a lot of confusion. And then it leads up to physical violence over time. I remember when I came out of my abusive relationship and I met my coworker, I told her that I had escaped an abusive relationship and what had happened. And she told me, yes, these people also have a tendency to become physically violent over time. At the time, I didn't even really recognize that. Yeah. So that is why today I'm sharing that with you, what I have learned through a lot of self-reflection and a lot of reflection on my relationship, and also red flags that I have noticed in hindsight. I think it's very important to know, and stay safe, and thank you very much for listening.